Okay, folks, welcome to my first video. This is a more advanced video, so I'm trying to make videos for intermediate, high intermediate, advanced students because I think there's a lot of easy stuff out there, and so I want to make more challenging videos for students who are trying to improve their English. And we're looking at just one part, just one stanza of the classic poem The Raven by Edgar Allen Poe, who was a very famous writer, poet from the 19th century, from the 1800s. So like I said, we're just going to read the first stanza, and then I'm going to kind of translate it a little bit, and then we're going to look at the relevant vocabulary. In other words, the vocabulary that is still useful today, because a lot of it is sort of old-fashioned and not very useful today, but we're going to look at the vocabulary that is still useful for someone who is learning the language. Okay, let's go ahead. Give me 1 second here. My presentation is stalling here. Okay, so here we have the first stanza. The first stanza says, "Once upon a midnight dreary, while I pondered, weak and weary, over many a quaint and curious volume of forgotten lore, while I nodded, nearly napping, suddenly there came a tapping, as of some one gently rapping at my chamber door. 'Tis some visitor,' I muttered, tapping at my chamber door. Only this and nothing more." Okay, so let's go ahead. Let's look at my translation first. This is sort of like my translation into contemporary English. So once, one night, very late on a dreary night, I sat pondering, weak and weary, while reading a quaint and curious volume of forgotten lore. Volume is a book, right? So we have a book, we say like volume 1, volume 2, right? Book 1, book 2. I was nearly nodding off, which means falling asleep. Suddenly there was a knock, like someone knocking at my door. "Must be a visitor," I muttered. Nothing more. In other words, it's just a visitor, nothing more, nothing else. We might say nothing else nowadays, or we probably would just say it's just a visitor. It's nothing to be worried about. Okay, so let's go back to the vocabulary. This is, like I said, the vocabulary that is probably going to be relevant nowadays, that words that we would still tend to use nowadays. Okay, so something dreary is something gloomy or dark. So if it's dreary outside, it means that it's really, the weather is bad and it's dark and gloomy. And you can see a lot of the words in this poem have a very dark, they have a very dark connotation. So Edgar Allen Poe is a writer that's sort of associated with Halloween and a very kind of gothic, dark view of life. Ponder means to think about something very deeply. If you're pondering something, you're thinking about it, you're analyzing it, maybe you're trying to make a decision. Think of pound, right? You're weighing something. I think the two words might be related somehow, right? So you're weighing something, you're pondering it. Weary. So if you're weary, you're exhausted, but maybe not necessarily physically exhausted, like you're fed up with something. And I think that the writer here uses weary to kind of try to show this, right? This person is psychologically exhausted, maybe as much as physically, or more psychologically than physically exhausted. Quaint. Quaint means old-fashioned and maybe unique. Like usually we would talk about like a house or a town that's kind of maybe a little bit weird, unique, or unusual, and in an old-fashioned way. But I think, and I'm not sure what he meant, right? Because this is kind of old, but I suspect definitely old-fashioned, right? Because we know that he was reading, it said a book of lore. You see the word lore over here on the right, which is traditional wisdom. So we know that he was reading like a really old book. But I suspect maybe the writer might have sort of meant unique, right? Because the book is about lore, which is traditional wisdom. So some people have suggested that he was writing about witchcraft or something like the occult, right? Like, something like witchcraft is what people say is like what people call the what witches what was believed that witches believed, right? Something like that. Okay, I didn't explain that very well, but you get the idea. Curious, if something is curious, it's interesting, or maybe a little bit unusual, right? So again, it's very similar. The word curious here goes with quaint, right? It's sort of special, but maybe a little bit weird, right? They both have that they're kind of synonyms in this case. Lore, remember I said before, it's traditional wisdom, and this word has a very kind of mythical, right? It's kind of like a synonym of myth, which is what I meant when I was talking about witchcraft, right? So you kind of imagine, religion, myths, the spiritual world more than the physical world when you hear this word. Mutter is when you say something under your breath, so you don't say it clearly, so you just kind of mutter something. He said it to himself, so he had no reason to say it clearly. Nod off. If you nod off, it means that you fall asleep, especially if you're not like going to sleep at night. You just nodded off. You fell asleep for a moment, right? A little bit different from napping, which he also uses in the poem, but I didn't include napping because I think most of you guys probably know the phrase "take a nap," and I think it says it was late at night. So usually we wouldn't use napping nowadays if you fell asleep in the middle of the night. Although it seems like he was studying, so it wasn't like he was trying to go to sleep, right? But in any case, it seems a little bit odd to me, so that's why I didn't include it in the list of sort of modern vocabulary. Okay, guys, so that's it. I hope you found this video useful. Please subscribe and let me know if you'd like to see more videos like this. If you'd like me to do the rest of the poem, some more stanzas from the poem. All right, thanks a lot for watching. Catch you later.